And we are finally live. Thank you, StreamYard. Hi, everybody. I am Haley Gray, and this is my dear friend, Victoria Bentley.
Hi, everybody.
And we're happy to be here tonight. If you guys are on the live, give us a hashtag live. If you're on the replay, give us a hashtag replay. Let us know that you are out there. We're going to talk about handling disappointment when life gives you lemons. Because, you know, life likes to do that, right? And business, you know, you get to choose whether you're going to be happy or sad or upset or, you know, how you're going to approach this whole business thing. But you get to choose happiness or not.
Isn't it Lincoln who said that? A man is only as happy as he chooses to be or as he wants to be. Something like that.
I don't know if I remember that exact quote, but I believe it wholeheartedly. Yeah. You know, that you are as happy as you choose to be. And, you know,
maybe that was Mark Twain.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Choosing, you know, how you're going to handle disappointment when things happen. I mean, when you go to make a sale and, you know, you get slapped down, or you have to let a client go because
he's a life's too short client.
They're a nightmare of a client, or handling health issues. You know, my family's had its fair share, and, you know, you've had your fair share of it. So, yeah, I mean, it's, I don't want to sit here and pat everybody on their head and say, oh, it's going to be okay. Because it's not always okay and wonderful and easy. And, you know,
who says it's going to be okay? Right?
Yeah.
I'm always surprised that when you present someone with something that's happened or something that's gone bad or something that's gone wrong, and how quickly people say, oh, it's going to be okay.
Or it was meant to be. You know, somebody dies and they're like, oh, but it's for the best.
You know,
really?
We don't always know that it's going to be okay. And I think that's a lot about whoever's saying it, that they're not comfortable with conflict or comfortable with the unknown or comfortable with a lack of control. And I mean, we all like control, right? So,
I'm extremely type A, those of you that don't know me, and very into control.
Well, and understandably, you know, when you've had, for example, you've had a mentally ill daughter and you've had not a lot of control, certainly over her illness. You've had control about the hospital she's in and maybe the doctor
to some extent,
or the medicines she takes, right?
But not always. You know, we've had 2 weeks or 3 weeks in the emergency room at various hospitals, and well, you're going to take whichever hospital we manage to get you into because you've been sitting here for 2.5 weeks. Oh, great. So it's a hospital we didn't want to go to. Well, you don't really have a choice.
There are only X number of mental health beds in the county, and this is one of them.
In the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, why I brought up this title tonight is, for some of you know, I had some very, very major back surgery in July. And it was this was not a run-of-the-mill surgery. This is a very big deal. And it was interesting. You know, and I'm pretty dialed in, and a couple of different surgeons I saw said, well, you know, you've broken your back 3 times. And I said, really? I did not know that. And you think, well, if you broke your back, you'd know it. But no, you don't always know it. But anyway, so I had very major surgery in the summer, and I had a pretty long recovery, and I've been feeling pretty good until a week ago Friday. And I woke up and I had great pain again. And fast forward, I've had the MRI and I have to have surgery again. And I'll tell you what, my mind is blown and I'm so disappointed. And the reality is I didn't do anything wrong. The surgeon didn't do anything wrong. And actually the surgery this is something else. This is another thing. And to deal with this is so, it just knocked the wind out of me. And the first thing you say is, well, that's not fair. And it's like, well, fair is where you go and get cotton candy in the fall. And then all this stuff goes through your mind. And then it's kind of like the bargaining and the anger and all the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stuff. And then it's like, okay, now what can I do about it? And that's, I think, what I want to go to tonight and talk to about people is that, yeah, you got to process it and you've got to go through your stuff. But you're a whole lot better off if you can get to, now what do I do? What has to be done and how do we get it done?
Yeah.
And that is very...
Now my daughter's been sent to the hospital that I expressly did not want her to go to, and I told them that I absolutely forbade them from sending her to.
And they did.
And they did it anyway.
Right. And I think acceptance, and that's like I guess that's the final Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stage, is acceptance. That's the tough one. And I think...
Well, I think that there's one more stage beyond just acceptance. I think that there is acceptance, and then there is the, what the hell am I going to do about it?
Isn't that the same thing?
No, I'm not convinced that that's exactly the same thing. I'm thinking that there is kind of the step beyond the, okay, I'm accepting it, you know, and I've internalized it, but there's not always like an action plan that comes out of acceptance, because you don't always have to have an action plan out of acceptance. You know, there's not always that.
But if you don't, then
now what next? Right. And that to me is kind of one of the things that like separates the, you know, the women from the girls, is the, you know, or the, you know, the adults from the kids, is the, and now what are you going to do? Because it's a really shitty situation. I've accepted that it's a shitty situation. You know, it's made me vastly unhappy. And now what are my next steps? Because you don't have to. I mean, you can wallow in it and you can be a victim. But, you know, there is definitely...
I give myself 5 minutes for that. Any more than 5 minutes is just gross. You know?
Yeah, I give myself a little time depending on, you know, the severity of it. And then I start, you know, reaching out and saying, okay, so now what am I going to do about this mess? You know,
make the plan.
You know, somebody hand me a shovel, you know, or a weed whacker or whatever I need to do to deal with this and get on with it.
Mine was a box of pinwheel cookies. I'm just saying. But you know,
yeah, sometimes that has been my coping strategy.
Time and junk food heal all wounds. Yeah.
Oreos.
Oh,
Oreos are one of mine. Oreos and milk.
Don't like milk, but
they got me through accounting.
I don't like accounting. I want to put a plug in for my husband, who has been with me every step of the way and has been just a wonderful person. And so what I'm saying about that is the greatest gift he gave to me was to just listen. He didn't say, but what if this and what if that? That wasn't the time for it. Maybe later. But he just listened to my particular sorrow of the day. And I thought, if I start to cry, I might not ever stop. And he just realized he didn't argue or go down a road that, you know, he's not a neurological surgeon. He's not an orthopedic surgeon. He just worked really hard at stepping in my shoes and trying to feel the pain.
Holding space.
That was such a gift. So anybody, if you're ever in that position, wow, just to be heard and to be treated respectfully and kindly, it was so lovely. And to go with me to these appointments and to be that second pair of ears, because I was too freaked out to hear what they had to say. And it made such a difference. And then he said, I think we need to get a pizza. And you know, as
But
opposed to,
today was National Pizza Day.
was it really?
Oh yeah.
Well, I had a Little Caesars pepperoni pizza that was $6 and it was fabulous. I mean, it was
Hmm.
a $50 pizza. It was so darn good.
Hmm.
I didn't have to think about dinner. And so I want to thank my husband for being the really good guy that he is and knowing intuitively how to handle this and what a difference it made in my day.
Pizza and chocolate.
Yeah, yeah. Pizza and pinwheel cookies, man, oh man, and a Coca-Cola from Wawa. It's just you do what you
That's
can
the
do.
little things in life, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, one of my coping mechanisms is Starbucks.
Yeah, I'm not a coffee drinker, and I talked to my brother, and my brother he just said, "Oh, Vic, I'm sorry," and it was just so nice. It wasn't like, "Well, have you tried the surgeon at this latest Ivy League?" We didn't go down that road. It was just, "Oh, I'm sorry. What can I do?" And
Mhm.
that was very helpful. So, in making lemonades, and I'm thinking we all have been coworkers, and we all have been spouses or children or siblings of where we had the opportunity to watch someone get a life of lemons,
Mhm.
and how we choose to respond to those people really does a lot to improve humanity. And in business, that's just de rigueur for business. You're just going to have a lemon day. You didn't get the order, or they chose somebody else, or you got fired and they're going to hire somebody else's company, or
You
or
didn't get the
whatever.
promotion, or
Mhm. Mhm.
you
Mhm.
didn't get the sale,
And I
or the
think
customer went batshit crazy.
oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
always a favorite.
Speaking of which, I I'm an attorney for some of you who know or don't know. And I get those pop-ups on my phone, and there was a pop-up and I recognized the attorney, and it just blew my mind. And he was arrested at a gas station after his wife dimed him out to the police because she was worried about his erratic behavior. Oh, and that he threatened her with a gun, just saying. But that
Minor details.
on his way to kill a bunch of politicians, and they surrounded the gas station, and I mean he had guns, he had rope, he had
Mm.
50 crucifixes in his bag. I mean, this guy
Did he
meant,
bring garlic with him too?
oh, I don't know, in a stake to pound through somebody's heart. It was really, and I guess what I'm saying is this is a guy who just couldn't see beyond the lemons and
Hmm.
decided a little self-help might be the solution. And what a mess he's made. And I I
Hmm.
saw this and I copied the link and I sent it to my stepmother, who had grown up in the town that this man practices in. And she sent me a note back. She said, "Oh, I worked for him for years. I had no idea." So people are not, you take COVID and being inside for many people for a long time and disruption of business. Maybe his business had gone belly up and maybe his marriage had gone belly up. I don't know. But this was a guy who obviously was seeing things definitely the half empty side of the glass. And he ended up in the psych ward, and
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
and um
And
you
he's lucky he ended up in the psych ward and not in jail.
oh, he's there now. No, he ended up at the psych ward. Now he's in jail. But,
Okay.
but it was the psych ward, I think, that said, "Gee, we're going to have to let the guy out." But I'm thinking about this, and I think we got to really, really think about how we're going to deal with lemons, because in a case like that, a lot of people could have gotten hurt.
Well,
And
we have a lot of people now that are going to that violent extreme.
it's not new.
It's not new, but I think we have more of it feeding off the internet, and people going into chat rooms and, hearing the latest whatever theories and, and being groomed. And you have
Being played.
Yeah, being groomed, being played, all of those things happening. And, it gets people into a state where they've been wound up, and you see, like all of the people in Guyana who drank
Jim Jones.
Jim Jones, the Kool-Aid, because they had been wound up to that point. And, it's an interesting perspective to me and an interesting reminder to me to be very cognizant of what I'm being fed and how I'm being fed it, and how I'm deciding to consume things as well. And very much being aware of my mental state.
Remember the song, Blow Up Your TV, Eat a Lot of Peaches?
I do not remember that song.
Yeah, it was a great song about, gee, there's just so much bullshit out there, and maybe we just need to turn it off.
Yeah. Well, and there is a lot of bullshit out there.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it's become this like multi-billion-dollar a year industry with all these talk show hosts who have huge talk show presences on radio shows, who do YouTube channels, who do all the stuff, and you have to really look at
their news from The View.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is that?
Like, where are you getting your information from, and how are you forming your viewpoints, and how are you choosing to react to certain stimuli? We were also talking a little bit before we got on air about a book that I'm reading. It's called The Happiness Advantage. And I'm not done with the book, so don't spoil it for me. But, it's really that, that happiness in some ways is a choice, and high performance is a choice. And he was talking about how he was at Harvard and how many of the students at Harvard are utterly miserable and unhappy. And, they're feeling like it's all a chore, and they are, downtrodden and, nose to the grindstone. And it's all just a really miserable experience. And you're sitting here going, but you're
one of the luckiest people in the world.
Yeah, you're one of the luckiest people in the world. Why are you so flippin' miserable? And it's just an interesting perspective, because you have this massive opportunity that is going to propel you forward light years in your career. I mean, I saw it at Duke, where it did propel me light years forward in my career. And, it's interesting because the author went to Africa and was talking to some kids in South Africa who had the opportunity to go to school, and he was at school. And so he asked the question, well, who here likes going to school? Expecting that he would get the, oh my God, I really hate going to school kind of mentality that you see in the US and that you see with a lot of the kids here in the US. And every kid there was really, really excited and like popping out of their seats and like, hands in the air and super stoked to be, there in the school with the opportunity to learn. And what he saw was that it was not just an opportunity to learn, but it was a chance to move their entire family out of poverty. And to move their entire family to a whole new level and perspective. And it was like, wow. And you compare that and contrast that to the students who are at Harvard, where it's a very similar type of opportunity. And they're like, Eeyore.
You remember when Oprah was doing that Girls Academy, and I remember her saying
she still does.
Chose Africa because when she was interviewing those children, they said, oh, we just want to go to school and have books and learn. And she said, and the kids here were saying, I want the latest pair of sneakers.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were talking the happiness thing in Lincoln, and I looked up the quote while you were talking, and it's, most folks are as happy as they make up their minds to be. And that was the Lincoln quote. And I think that's a good one. And I used to have trouble with it. And and, something to the effect, yeah, well, they're not walking in my shoes. But I think,
right. Yeah. They haven't had to deal with my nonsense.
I think that there are many things, not all, I get it, not all, death of a child and whatever. But I think there are many things that we can choose to look at differently where we could make ourselves a lot happier than we are. And
absolutely.
I think it's very important. I think it's hugely important. So,
well, and I think that you can take any situation and turn it into a learning experience, and take something away from it. And that's not me being flippant. I mean, this is, me talking and speaking from the, I've had my entire life implode and literally clawing my way back out of it and doing whatever it took to make that happen. And, I've taken a lot of things away from my family's situation in terms of, it would be really cool if we had a mental health roadmap for people to reference. How do I put that together? Where can I get the lists of resources to put together? And really putting all of that stuff together so that we can, help more people.
And having been a mother who's been there and done that, maybe you can do the roadmap.
Well, and I mean, I've learned how few people have access to resources, and how fortunate we are to have obtained resources. 99% of people don't. That's why our jails are so full.
And our social services system is such, it's the up elevator on the Titanic. So often it's just so, it's navigating such a bureaucratic nightmare that you wonder, how does anyone survive?
Well, the answer is most don't. The vast majority, 98, 99% don't. They don't find their way through the system.
For the amount of money that we have thrown at this, and for somewhere along the line, the do-gooders have said, oh, it is cruel to keep people institutionalized. And I think, I think it's pretty darn cruel to have a 20-year-old pretty girl out on the street getting raped and trafficked because she's too mentally ill to take care of herself.
But that's what happens to most women who have mental illness who end up homeless. And by the way, most of them who have the kind of mental illness we're talking about do end up homeless.
Yes, and I am a big proponent of institutionalizing people like that, if at all possible, until they get well, to keep them safe from that sort of harm.
Right, but I mean, resources just don't exist. I mean, we were doing some quick back of the envelope calculations. And I mean, just to highlight the difficulty of the situation, my daughter went to a group home that's amazing. Somebody had to donate the money to buy the home that this was built on.
Time out. Then why the fuck are we bringing 10 million people over the fucking border that we're going to end up paying for when we cannot look out for our children here? End of story. Okay, so somebody donated the house, and then what?
Then they had to renovate it and make it fully handicapped accessible. And then they had to...
we just spent $500 million turning DC into an armed camp. How about that towards mental illness? How about that towards PTSD soldiers?
And, how about we don't incite people to go, take over the government and fight and do things. I mean, and yet there were people in the crowd that are doing that, and online that are encouraging riots and rebellion.
But we've got a First Amendment, and people can say, no, they can't say fire in a theater. I understand that. But I listened to the speech, and I listened to every word. And he said, let's peacefully walk to the Capitol.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people who came in with handcuffs and bombs. And I'm talking about the people online who were feeding that.
There were people online feeding that. Yes.
I'm
And there were
talking
bombs
about
in
a
the
lot more stuff.
RNC and there were bombs in the DNC. And I have no idea who's put them there, and I don't know. But I think everything is pretty nuts. And we have a lot of people who need to be taken care of, and we need to think about that.
But we absolutely have a lot of people that need to be taken care of. But you wonder at the mental health and the mental stability of the people who are taking bombs to the freaking DNC.
I'm not wondering about their mental health. DNC and RNC had bombs.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who are inciting lawlessness and anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
People who are they don't want a government. They want the anti-government. They want chaos. They want mayhem. They want total craziness. And you're not going to read out of that.
That's back to that question of, how are you feeding yourself? What are you feeding? What are you accepting in? How are you choosing to internalize that?
Mm-hmm.
And
that takes a lot of intelligence and a lot of,
how are you being manipulated by social media?
Yeah. And how about if we just turn it off? How about if, I look at the power of Jack Dorsey and I look at the power of Zuckerberg, and I've just pulled up those two because Twitter and Facebook seem to be, the biggest ones, right? What am I missing here? There's probably more. There's more. Yeah.
And Parler and MeWe, and there's a bunch.
Yeah, but those are the biggies. I mean, those are the biggies. And I think they don't have any rules. They can't be sued. They can't be,
they are being sued.
They can't have, they have a really good deal that you can't.
Yeah, no, Facebook is in the middle of some antitrust stuff. Oh, they're absolutely being sued. And they're being threatened with being broken apart.
You and I can't sue them. We can't. I mean, this is all so big. This is all so unreachable. This is so, they're beyond that. They have no controls, and they're part of the surveillance state now. I mean, when the CEO of Google had met with Obama 457 times during his presidency, it was about something. It's from your iWatch to your cell phone to they know where you are and they know you know what I mean? We've lost a lot of our freedom. Even the ACLU has decided they are not going to do First Amendment issues anymore. They got other fish to fry now.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
what people are choosing to carry cell phones. They're choosing to be on Facebook.
That's right.
They're choosing to be on LinkedIn or whatever other platform, or using Google, or doing these things. And,
and they're giving away freedoms.
There is a certain attendant loss of freedom that goes into all these wonderful IoT, Internet of Things, right? When you have an ALEXA on your desk next to you, I'm not saying it out loud because I don't really want it to activate.
I think it already is.
It probably is. But the reality of the situation is that we are choosing as a society to engage in these things. And you have to understand that there is an attendant loss of privacy. When you're using plastic credit cards, or you're using, your phone to pay, or you're using loyalty programs at Starbucks and, their membership program to pay for your coffee, you're giving up a certain amount of privacy every single time you do that, because that's data points that they're tracking. But you explicitly download the app onto your phone and do it. I mean, I don't think that, Zuckerberg is the only, or, Facebook is the only problem here. I think that it's all of technology where, if we're concerned about a lot of this stuff, we have to really look at ourselves in the mirror and say, okay, so, smart TVs and everything else. I mean, think about how much information we're giving these companies just by what TV shows we're downloading.
I remember
what music we listen to, and
technological tyranny is how I heard it described yesterday, and I think that's pretty accurate. I can remember, gosh, I can't tell you the name of the bookstore. It wasn't Borders. It was before that. It wasn't Barnes and Noble. It was before that. It was the bookstore in the mall 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a rewards program. And I was there with my mother, and the woman said, "Would you like to join our rewards program? It's free." And my mother said, "What does it entail?" And she said, "Well, for so many books you buy, you get a free book." And she said, "Well, what does that entail?" And she said, "Well, we keep track of what you buy." And my mother just said, "I don't want anyone keeping track of what books I read. Thank you very much." And I think about it, and I thought, well, that's a little bit extreme. And she was absolutely right. And
right, but we have our,
out of the gate on that. That's so long gone.
Our Harris Teeter shopping cards, right? So we're telling them every single thing that we purchase. Amazon knows exactly what we've purchased. Wawa probably knows every single time you've gone and bought a fountain drink Coke.
Yes. And I just find it hilarious that Mr. Bezos, in his present union problems, doesn't want the secret ballot. He doesn't think that's fair. And I think it's hysterical that his people want to unionize, and he doesn't want them to have the privacy of their union vote. And I think, really, how about that?
Mm-hmm.
So,
but
we've gotten ourselves
all of the
pickle.
And then how do you deal with it? Our cars are completely smart cars at this point.
Yes. I had heard Mr. Cheney, the former vice president, say something about, and it might have been a pacemaker, and forgive me, I might have the wrong heart device. He needed an internal defibrillator, I believe, but he needed some kind of heart surgery. And he made a choice not to have a certain one because if the codes had been exposed, somebody could have turned it off and killed him. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty scary. That's really very scary just to think about that.
Hi, we are 7 of 9. The Borg, right?
Yeah.
Those that didn't catch the joke. But seriously, from a technology perspective, we're quick to point at some of these social media platforms, but we're really choosing to leave a fingerprint all over the social media platforms and do that. And I am more cynical about other platforms, like news platforms. I'm more cynical about Amazon or all of these shopping platforms that can tell everything you've bought and where you've been and what you've done and who you've breathed on.
But wait a minute, Facebook really is a news platform. They are a publisher. They say that they're not, and that's what gets them off the hook. But they really are. Why would we say that they're not?
They're not in and of themselves publishing content. They're allowing content to be published on their platform.
And they're manipulating the content.
Absolutely.
People are being shadow banned. Things are disappearing. People's stuff isn't getting printed. You're getting at the bottom of the pile.
You get throttled. Yeah, exactly. And that's part of dealing with the algorithms. But I'm going to make the comment that, Facebook is a private company. And for better or for worse, it's a company that is owned by shareholders.
That's a public company.
It's a public company, okay? But it's not everybody in the public owns this company and has a right to tell it how to run its business.
That's correct. But we have antitrust laws, and we have all kinds of laws that tell you how to run your business. For instance, you can't dump certain chemicals down the drain.
Right, and Facebook is dealing with some antitrust stuff right now. Absolutely. there are some antitrust laws, and I mean, having seen some of the tech antitrust stuff that broke up AT&T, that stopped IBM cold in its tracks, you know, some of that gets pretty nasty.
Still standing.
So far. But, you know, we knowingly go onto Facebook to socialize and spread information all over the place. I'm more, and their data collection is pretty obvious, and they're pretty open about collecting data. My concern,
they're not open about what they do with it.
No, they're not necessarily open about what they're doing with it, but you can choose to be on Facebook or not.
That's correct.
You know, where my concern is more of the covert things that people are doing with data, like Google or like Amazon or other platforms that you're not really thinking about, hey, this could be collecting data. There could be data involved here.
Or just merely you and I having a conversation about lemonade, and then the ad comes up on the phone for lemonade.
Right.
That's very creepy.
Mm-hmm. Or pizza, and the pizza coupon shows up on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my phone's not in here, so I can't tell you if I've gotten a pizza coupon yet, but I'm hoping that I get a pizza coupon, not just kidding, before bedtime. So, like, seriously. But I mean, it's just, and we don't realize by using our cell phones how much information we're giving away and how much information our cell phone carriers and all of these apps that we put on our phones are gathering about us.
Could you live without it? We've had smartphones since what, 2007?
Before that.
Isn't that when the iPhone came out, in 2007?
Maybe. I didn't get my first one until 2012. But, you know, I probably could. I'm kind of that rare bird who could live without it. But I mean, I'm just thinking about, you know, how much data does Pokemon Go have about my husband and I in terms of our usage?
Where you've been?
Where you've been, who you've engaged with, who you've traded with, who you're friends with, you know, how frequently you're friends with, those kinds of things, you know, and you probably don't even think about it.
I think about it. I think it's darn creepy.
Absolutely. But, you know, here we are.
I have a friend. This is back to the lemonade thing. I have a friend who is recently divorced, and he is estranged from his children. The very typical story, for those of you who don't know, I was a divorce attorney, you know, quarter of a century. Parental estrangement, you know, oh, your father is a drunk. Your father is a mean guy. Your father beats me, whatever. Your father doesn't pay. You know, been there, lived that. We know that in my household. For one parent to get power over the children, over the other parent. I mean, this is very typical stuff. We'd see it every day. And it's often very hard to prove. The alienation of children. I mean, that's very hard to prove. But what my friend has decided to do, as he has retired, is he is going back to 1860. He has bought some land. He has, not yet, but will be soon, getting rid of his cell phone. Mm-hmm. He will have solar panels. He will be reading books. He will be writing letters. He will be planting a garden. He will be hunting, and he'll be riding his horse. And it will not involve an iPad or a smartphone. And I think that's pretty interesting. And I think it sounds pretty happy too. Mm-hmm. He knows what his priorities are. He is looking forward to a simpler life. And, you know, running a law firm is an extremely complicated, you know, you're just juggling balls all the time. Mm-hmm. A lot of jobs are complicated. I don't mean it that way, but the soon-to-be simplicity of turning back, leaving the technology behind, and going about the business of life, meeting people for dinner, and keeping things simple. That doesn't mean ignorant. It just means simple. And it sounds kind of nice. And that's his answer to the lemons. And
totally.
I really like the thought of it. My husband and I have talked about that and wondered if we could do that. I don't know. I could do without a cell phone. I could do without, you know, whatever. And a lot of the things I like to do are very solitary things. There are a lot of things I don't need technology for. It'll be interesting.
No, I get it. My job is very tech oriented. So here I sit, but yeah, no, I don't have to have a cell phone on me. In fact, I rarely have a cell phone on me. Like I said, it's not actually in here right now. My husband is currently playing Pokemon Go on my phone. So I don't know where my phone actually is at the moment.
I'm like that too. My husband always has his phone with him, but I don't. I find it's like a leash. It's an appendage, and I don't like it. And I feel tethered, and I don't want to. So
I feel you. Totally. Well, we are coming up on the end of our time tonight. This has been interesting and illuminating. This is a lot of fun. So I hope you guys are having a great night, and we'll talk soon.
We'll see y'all soon. Thank you for
Take
coming.
care.